order on this February 28, 2023. Ask Ms. Jenkins to please call the roll.
Hey, Robin.
Mr. Duncan?
Here.
Mr. Anthony?
Here.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Ms. Richards? Present.
All right, first item on the agenda is to review and consider approval to seek RFP or request for proposals for an external auditor for the financial year ending June 30th, 2023 through June 30th, 2020. Oh, this will go through 26?
That would be that would cover your term. It would be a 4-year.
Okay.
If y'all are
right.
okay with that.
Mr. McNeely, if you'll go ahead and present the item.
All right, so you should have received a copy of the request for proposals for your review, and it's the same format as the last time you did this. The dates have been updated, and the relevant information is there. So, if,
All right. Is there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Any questions or comments from any other members of the board? All right. Is there any public input? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the administration's recommendation?
I'll make the motion to adopt.
All right. Motion is made by Mr. Moore, seconded by Mrs. Richards. Again, any public input? Hearing none, we'll call the question. Ask members to vote your machines.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, next item is to review and consider approval for a request for proposals for our fiscal agent. Again, I guess for that same time period, June 30th, 2023 through June 30th, 2026. All right. Anything you want to present on that one, Mr. McNeely?
Once again, it's basically the same information. We did take some of the details out as far as the number of transactions and simplified it somewhat because they really don't need that information anymore. And so this will be given out, and we'll receive the sealed proposals on April 13th, and then come back to the board with a recommendation and your approval of our fiscal agent for the next 4 years.
Is there a motion to adopt the administration's recommendation?
I'll make a motion.
Motion is made by Mr. Anthony, seconded by Mr. Moore. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from any of the other board members present?
Mr. Duncan.
All right, Ms.
This
Dominguez?
This is what County Bank does for us right now.
Yes. Any other questions?
And what was the date again for bids to come back?
I think it said April, I'm sorry.
April 13th.
I think that sounds right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, any public input? Hearing none, we'll ask members, we'll call the question, ask members to vote your machines.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, final item on the agenda is to consider a $15,000 stipend to be paid out over 2 years to teachers who take positions that increase the diversity within the teaching staff at targeted schools, specifically those schools that are not within the 60-40 diversity range. We'll ask Mr. McNeely to introduce this item, and I believe Ms. Stilley will want to follow up with that.
I'll defer to Ms. Stilley.
Yes.
All right, Ms. Stilley.
I'll talk about it, and
Smart man.
any of the executive team can chime in. But one of our goals is to increase to really diversify our workforce, our teaching staffs in particular, to a 60-40 range of diversity. And so we have some targeted schools that, are not within that 60-40 range. And we would like to offer both new hires that, are signing on to our district, that go to a school that helps to diversify that diversity range of one of the targeted schools, or a teacher that would transfer voluntarily to a school that helps to diversify the faculty at that school that we would pay them a $15,000 stipend that's paid over 2 years. And that would basically be about $625 additionally a month for them to assist the district in diversifying the faculty, the teaching faculty at our schools. And we have a targeted list of schools that are way out of the range of 60-40 that we need to diversify more. And the reason this number came up was we thought about, by the time they clear with retirement withdrawals and taxes, it would probably be about $500 a month. And we thought that would be enough to attract and to try to, voluntarily get our teachers to help diversify some of our schools. So that's the recommendation from our administrative team on this topic.
So I know we'll have some questions, but let's go ahead and get a motion on the table. Is there a motion to adopt the administration's recommendation? Mr. Moore?
I'll make the motion.
Motion is made by Mrs. Richards. Is there a second on the motion?
A second.
Seconded by Mr. Moore. First question from me, Ms. Stilley. These stipends, would they only be available to teachers who have received state certification?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And are there any other questions from committee members first? Mr. Anthony?
Are there any kind of, plans in place to make sure that we're getting a quality teacher, like somebody who has some experience under their belt, or somebody whose evaluations have come back good? Is there any plan for that?
Yeah, so I think state certifications, and then of course, if they're a current teacher already teaching, I think that they would definitely have to have, more than satisfactory ratings on their evaluations. And then of course, new hires that are, coming out of the university that may be, if they're graduating from the university, then they're satisfactory. So I think that definitely would be a priority and be necessary, be required.
Any other questions from committee members? Mr. Moore?
Yes, my only concern about it, about the whole transfer and investment and the stipends for teachers is that they also exhibit some consciousness of the equity consciousness plan that we have, and that they're bought into the social emotional learning, because it doesn't matter from which level of teaching they're, what school they're in, whether they're in a minority, majority school or majority school, they understand the social and emotional aspect, of that transfer, and it's just strictly not a money thing only, but that the money is just an incentive.
And, our goal is to have the very best, individuals to help diversify, not just to diversify for the sake of diversifying. Because in some cases, some of our schools that are targeted, that need more diversity, are failing schools. So obviously, this is a strategy to improve schools that are low performing as well. And, that's really another very important consideration.
Any other questions, Mr. Toller? No, go ahead, Mr. Toller.
Couple quick ones. What if this changes the ratio of the school that they're leaving?
So that would be something that, we would have to monitor, because we would not allow a teacher to leave. In other words, there's targeted schools that this would help, but we also have to watch the school that they're leaving so that it's not throwing that school out of balance. So that would be something, and I think Dr. Purcell is going to be having an Excel sheet that she's going to keep up with that. So if this teacher moves, this is what the ratio would be of diversity. And so that's a very good point, but that's something we're going to have to monitor, because the last thing we want to do is to diversify this targeted set of schools and then mess up the other schools, right?
Right. What about the employees that are currently there that are already in place? Will they feel like they are being slighted because they were not rewarded?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Not sure I know the answer to that question, but that point. But I guess the consideration would have to be in terms of budget, you know, and how much can we afford, how much does the board have to put into this? That would multiply the numbers a great deal.
Then the last question was, will it create an atmosphere of employees waiting for the bonus to make these moves? So if, for instance, are we doing this long term? If this is a one-time fix, and if I'm coming out of school 18 months from now, and I say, well, if they're not doing the bonus, then I'm going to go somewhere else and wait for the bonus before I come back. You see what I mean? Like, are we going to keep doing this, or is this going to be something that we're going to create an atmosphere where we could actually go backwards because people would say, I'm not going to school until I get a bonus?
Well, my thoughts would be that, you know, we try it to see, first of all, does it work? I mean.
Yeah, I'm not against it. I'm just saying, it's just those questions that pop
I mean,
in my mind.
I think that, you know, maybe we want to have, for this year to see, I think we have to assess it after this year and see. It could be something that we think is going to work and it doesn't. It's not effective. So we have to, you know, think of another strategy. But I think I would foresee us coming back and, you know, first seeing if it's effective to see if we want to continue it after this first 2 years.
I had a quick question, kind of following up with that. Do we have an idea of how many teachers we need to move, so we can have an idea of the price tag on this? And I want to echo his question too. I'd be concerned for a minority. Well, if there's a teacher at a school that's already committed to being there, we hire somebody else who gets a $15,000 bonus and they get nothing. I'd be a little concerned about that as well. But do we have an idea of how many teachers we need to make a move?
I don't think it's as many as we think, and Dr. Fussell may have a number in her mind already. I'm not sure. She's been looking at this more closely, but
Recognize Ms. Fussell.
So what we started our staffing meetings.
Hold on, because we got
So we
people that might want to
started
watch this on TV and hear you.
Oh, sorry. We started our staffing meetings today with our high school principals, and just a few examples. You know, it doesn't get what the Excel sheet does is it puts it within the range. So again, it's not just about meeting the range, but also diversifying for our students. When you get within the range, it changes from red to green. Some of them, it was like you're talking like 2 teachers. I think Mr. Gico and I met with 7 or 8 principals, and we were talking like less than 10 teachers within that made a difference in if I was, you know, 11% non-black teachers or non-black, because it's not just some we need minority, some we need non-black teachers. So we have a targeted group of schools based on that, but it's not as many as you think. But some of the questions that you all brought up are very good questions, and we've kind of had that with when we offer teachers to go to Greenville Park or Woodland Park, and they had the additional money. You know, we didn't see some of those things come up, but we did see teachers stay. But I think it brings into point, like Ms. Tilley said, try it, because we also are about academic achievement. So we want to move teachers to where they're going to have a positive impact on academic achievement, not just diversity while protecting the other, but it will take a lot of tightening of how transfers happen, of how, because you also have to have the area certification. One of the things we went through with principals today is who's leaving, what positions do you have that are going to be vacated? Because it's not about emptying everybody out and just replacing, but making strategic moves with hopefully an incentive that will maybe help somebody make that decision to try a different school that's out of where they live or what have you. So, but we don't have a definite number because we just did the first wave today. We're talking less than 10 for the high school group that we met with the last 2 days.
Yeah, I was going to say is that what I had been hearing was that over all grade levels we were under 50 teachers that we would need that we would be looking at to get this accomplished.
Yes, sir. And like when we would work with the principal, we'd say you have 2 retirees. All right, this is what your diversity goal would be to meet. And a lot of times it was just movement of 2 or 3 made a difference in being in range. It doesn't mean they had 40%, but they were within the range, targeted range of growing towards meeting that target.
And then I would also note that actually in the Advocate this morning, there was an article where even at the state level, they're looking at different initiatives to accomplish very similar goals and maybe even funding some initiatives along these lines.
Because I'll say too, like talking about what Mr. Toller said, this is one example, but in the future, when you have a content area that's hard to fill at a certain school, that's always been something that's been up for discussion. Like, what if you need a math person, you can't get a math person here, or a science person? This just opens a pilot where we may can use it when we have targeted areas where we're working with a school.
All right, Mr. Westmoreland.
Yeah, I have a question that's coming into my mind is, what if we, at the end of the 2 years, their money's gone, are they going to be looking to move from that school, or are we going to be able to keep them at that school at a lesser rate? You know?
Well, and I'm going to tell you this, Mr. Westmoreland, this is another thing with SLU resident students. One of the things, one of our strategies is put them in schools that maybe they don't automatically think they want to go to, because once you're there, and the leaders doing their job and the culture's there, you don't want to, I mean, that's the goal. Get them, incentivize them being there, because once they're there and they see the culture and those are their students, then that's where they want to be. And that's the same strategy we try to use with our placement of our SLU residency students.
I have a question.
Oh,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Joe.
So my question is this. I'm not I'm not opposed. I'm kind of on the fence on it here, to be honest. My biggest concern is, what about uncertified teachers? Because it is no secret that we sometimes place uncertified teachers in some of these schools that have F ratings, D ratings. If I'm an uncertified teacher, I'm already living on the cusp of saying I could have my job taken from me at any moment because I'm not certified yet. Now, if you just have opened the door to stipends for these certified teachers to come in, my job is now on the line. What does that say to uncertified teachers? I know we're trying to build the resume here, but sometimes it takes time to get your certification.
So that's one of the things that was one of our conversations today, Mr. Piazza. We would say, how many you have non-certified? Have you been talking to them? Because we communicate throughout the year with, it's $6,000 difference when you're not certified and you are. And what about, we started additional cohort with our Teach Tangi. So we have all of these things that are making it easier, but that's conversation. We tell principals, just like we tell them about seniors who may not graduate, don't wait to the end. Start meeting with them, letting them know. But one of the things we want to make sure is, we know we're going to have to hire back non-certified. There's not enough certified people graduating, but we need our non-certified people to be working in the programs we have offered, working with the things we've been purchasing to support them, and that's part of what principals look at. What commitment are you making? What are you doing to work on that pathway?
Well, are they going to be eligible for this stipend as well, or no?
No, sir, this is certified. My understanding is it was certified.
Because my thing is, they're there voluntarily at some of these schools. Shouldn't they get the benefit just as much as the certified teacher?
Well, I would oppose giving the stipend to uncertified, because I want to motivate them to get their certification. We give them a free pathway to get certification. So go get the certification, then you can get the stipend. That would be my.
And we
And
do.
Mr. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say that the $6,000 more that a certified teacher makes, that's really an incentive too for uncertified teachers. And additionally, the board
Exactly.
last year passed, if you remember, that we would bring them up to the step, prior to that, we would hold them at 0, and they got certified, they would go to 1. So now there's a second incentive that we're doing for uncertified teachers, and that is if you get your certification, not only do you get $6,000 more money, but you get moved up on, however many years you've been teaching uncertified is going to count towards your steps. So I think that's, when I'm thinking about this, that's one of the incentives we put in for uncertified. This is something to help with diversity at particular schools, and I think Dr. Purcell's right. I think there's times when we need to offer incentives for hard to staff, math teachers at a high school, or English teachers, or whatever. I think we really need to look at that more, and I think that there's federal funds that we can use to help with some of this. I know that there's more money coming in down from the state level, because they're recognizing that all of this is an effective strategy. So it's kind of new territory for us, but I think it's something that is maybe worth getting into and at least trying as a strategy to see how it works for us.
Right.
So I just want to outline my thinking on this for the benefit of the public, because I know there's a lot of teachers out there that are saying, or that can help justify why they would also be entitled to various versions of stipends, whether it's those hard to fill positions or various things that they do. The reason that there's some urgency behind this particular stipend for me is that this is one of the outlined goals that we have to show to the court for final closure in our DSEC case, in that we have to demonstrate to the court within the next year or two that we have in good faith done everything that we can to diversify staff at each one of our schools. It's something that the court compliance officer specifically pointed out in his annual report a few months ago, where, at least in his opinion, there is more that we can be doing to get this accomplished. And if there's an idea, and look, I think we have done a lot. We have done a lot over the last 10 years in particular to try and improve diversity in our faculty and administration. We've done recruiting events. We're hiring hopefully a new recruiter to help do things. We've done the Certify Our Own program. We have done a lot. But it's one of those things where I don't want to risk having an idea that was on the table, that there was something that we could have done to meet this criteria, and then we decided not to do it, and then the court, for whatever reason, says, well, you didn't do everything you could do, so I'm not going to give you final closure on the case. And so, I mean, that's my line of thinking. That's my concern. I don't like it necessarily because, again, I think there's a lot of teachers that are and staff out there that could make very good arguments as to why they should get more money. But I like even less the prospect of us not getting final closure on this case because we didn't do everything that we absolutely could to meet this criteria. Ms. Dominguez.
Just want to get a few clarifications. At our little workshop, we talked about $10,000 in over a 3-year period. So then today it was 15 in a 2-year. I'm just wondering what came about that, and then to make a clarification, exactly where is the money going to come from? Mm-hmm. And because we also discussed that day that where this is a green factor in our core compliance, it's also a goal just to reach 60/40. It's not a mandate. And I know I've done it myself, went to many job fairs trying to recruit, and people are just not there, whether they're minority or not, they're just not there. But I'm not comfortable with it because I just feel like if we have extra money, we really need more bus drivers, we really need more janitors, we really need more cafeteria workers. And where would be the incentive for these people that we can't get the kids to school if we don't have bus drivers? I just am not comfortable overstepping people that are already working on campuses, that are already, there. I'm not comfortable with hiring somebody straight out of college to go do this. I think if we do it, it ought to be someone who has a little bit more experience, because the goal is also to educate. Anybody coming out of college is going to jump on $15,000 a year. I don't care if they're good or not good. They're going to jump on it to go to that school just because they're going to need a job. I'm just not comfortable with that either. So if you could just clarify the money and why did we jump from 10,000 to 15?
Right. So the $15,000 stipend, first of all, it has to be enough to entice somebody to actually want to go to a different school, either transfer to a different school or to, when we hire them, we can place them at a school that helps to diversify. And when we got to looking at the original number that we were looking at, by the time, taxes and retirement, it was like, I don't know, $300 something. That's really not enough for some people I don't think, to really be bold enough to entice them to go. So we were thinking that if it's, if you divide 15,000 over 2 years, that's $625 a month. After taxes and retirement, they still would clear about 500 or close to it. That may be enough to entice them. Again, this is the first time that we've really done this. I don't know for sure, but I would imagine it would be enough to entice individuals. And that's where the 15,000. I think there was also some conversation about was it 10,000 we talked about, or do we do it for 1 year or do it for 2 years? Remember the conversation? 1 year, 2 years, whatever. We went back and forth. So, Mr. McNeely said, well, if we divided it over 2 years, the 15,000 over 2 years, then it's so much a month. You think of it like that. That's what teachers are looking at, their monthly paycheck. For 2 years, and it also is set for 2 years. On the funding source, our first priority would be to look at federal funding, and I think it does qualify for hard-to-staff schools, for schools that are low-performing, and I think that it would qualify for some of these, and that would be our first priority. But whenever we do the budget for this would be for the next fiscal school year, we would have it in the budget, and we would have clearly identified the funding source as well. But our first priority would to try to use federal dollars to do this, because obviously it would have an impact on the general fund budget. And your third question, because you asked.
Well, if the teachers coming straight out of college,
Yeah. Well, so if you think about it in terms of, okay, so we go to we go to job fairs, we go to universities, we go all over and we recruit. So the idea is that if you have an individual that comes to your table, especially to diversify the district, that you would be able to offer them a contract and say, and by the way, this is the additional stipend that you get. We could compete with other districts that are in that room, versus if we don't have that to offer. So that's why the new and if they're graduating with a teaching degree, they have to be satisfactory in whatever they've done a year residency now. So now it's not just a semester like some of us did, but it's a full year. And it's more rigorous. So I would say that new teachers, are prepared. And if they're unsatisfactory in that first year, we could, not have them back the second year and just stop the payment on those teachers. So they wouldn't continue.
So will they be paid by the month, or will they be paid by the year?
By the month. It would be their monthly check.
Okay, so is there an agreement that they have to say they're going to stay for 2 years? Or they just, if they go 5 months, they get $500 a month?
I think the
and that's
agreement is that they're not getting the 15,000 straight up or even after the first year, but it's a monthly thing. So if they want to continue to get the additional $625 a month, they stay for 2 years. I mean, the board wants something, we can have them sign an agreement, but if you have an employee that's, a teacher that goes, whether it's a new teacher or seasoned, that's not exhibiting the SEL or core values or whatever, and the principal doesn't think they're a right fit, then their payment of that $625 would stop once they leave that school.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the $625 a month is the sort of binding commitment that they're there for 2 years.
I just feel like we need a little more information myself, personally. Like, we don't know how many we're going to offer, where the money's going to come from, what's the budget going to be, is it going to be federal or general fund? I mean, do we have to have this like on our agenda tonight? Can we just get a little more information and then?
The agenda is just to consider it.
No.
The agenda is just to
that
consider, we're
means
not gonna
yes or-
vote. No, we're not gonna vote on it.
But no, we're voting.
No, we're voting on
Yeah,
it.
that's a
We're
vote.
voting on consider. on
That's a
consider.
vote.
Voting to send it to the full board.
And then the full board's got to vote for it tonight,
So-
but we don't really have all the details that would be necessary. to
Mr.
make-
President, can I?
Go ahead.
Okay, hold on, everybody, just a minute. Let me I don't think it,
Yeah, it's finance.
Is it
It's on the agenda tonight, yeah.
for the board to vote
Yeah,
on?
finance and audit, 28, yeah.
all right, who else wanted to?
One,
All right,
Joey has
Mr.
one.
Mr.
I'll knock
Anthony.
mine out real quick because it's going to kind of follow off of Rose's. it looks like if we have 50 teachers that move, that would be about 750,000. That's quick math, excuse me. But if this is going to take place for the fall, can we put this on next month's meeting and get more information on this? And that way we can find out how many teachers are needed, what's the list of schools, the criteria for the teachers, what happens, like Rose said, if they only stay 1 year, do they owe that money back, et cetera. And I don't know if that's parliamentary procedure for me to even ask that question, but is that something we can table? And
Well, you can make a motion to table over to our March 17th meeting, if you'd like to make that motion.
okay, well, I'd like any other opinions on that? I mean,
Well, this is one reason why I wish we weren't doing our meetings the way we're doing them.
Yes.
Last year, we did a committee meeting the first of the month, and we did a board meeting at the end of the month. And this is why, because if we have this on our agenda right now we have to vote on it in just an hour. We should not be doing this. We should
But
be waiting
normally,
till the
it would
next
go to
meeting.
next
Right.
Tuesday's meeting, it wouldn't be today. So I'm assuming it's on the agenda tonight because we need to do the fiscal agent and we need to do the auditing. But we don't have to do this today.
Right.
We can do this in March.
Right. And I agree with you, Trent. I think it needs to go back and get some more information, because, I mean, we don't know where the fund's coming from, how many you're going to need. There's a lot of variables that's going to really matter here. I'm not opposed to it. I don't think any of us are. We just want a little more information, and I think that would be something that I would feel more comfortable with, and it would solve a lot of issues as well. But I agree, though, we shouldn't have to vote on something tonight when it's just getting out of committee. I think from here on forward, if we have something in committee, it should go to the next meeting.
Unless it's something that needs
Yeah,
an
unless it's like an
immediate-
immediate issue.
Right.
Mr. McNeely?
Can I ask a question? If tonight, the committee goes ahead and votes to send it to the full board, but then at the full board level, you table it until the next full board meeting, so we wouldn't have to have another finance, well, I guess we'll have.
Well, we're having another
one
finance
anyway.
meeting on March
You
the
can reset it
17th.
for March 17th.
Yeah, well, everything is set for March 17th, but I would want the board to understand that we're going to be in the same situation on March 17th. The March 17th Finance Committee agenda is going to be set for approval
But not if we
on
do
the
it like-
same night. As
If we do it like Mr. McNeely's saying, that'll give us 2 weeks to
So consider,
consider
to
it, look
get
at
their
it, talk
stuff.
to people, talk to teachers.
Well, but if we table it
We're not meeting on
over,
the
if we
17th,
table the
are we?
finance item over to the next finance committee meeting, we're still accomplishing the same thing without having to juggle.
No, but then officially what we would do is vote on it 2 weeks after that.
Well, no,
You see
Because
what
we
I
wouldn't
mean?
want to vote on them the same night.
well, but that's what I'm saying, we will, because we're only having one March meeting, so we'll be in the same
No, we're only
situation
two.
on March 17th. We would be looking to approve the March 17th committee meetings at the March 17th meeting. But we will still, if you table this agenda item tonight to that March 17th Finance Committee meeting, it gives us another
I think,
opportunity to do that.
I guess the difference from my mind would be that if you table it in the committee, it's got to go back to committee, and there should be a 2-week delay before it goes to the board from committee. If you were saying, and you approve tonight and send it to the board, then you wait 2 weeks, you can amend it, you can make adjustments, but then you can vote on it.
I'm fine either way.
But I think we need to get it back in the habit, like Ms. Abrams was saying, is we should get back in the habit of committee, have a 2-week delay for us to talk to people, talk to teachers, come up with our vote, and then vote on it.
Well, and that is what our policy says about committee reports, so,
but if we vote on it tonight, we're voting on something that we don't know all the details about.
But your vote is.
No, we're not voting, we're just voting to send it to the
Just
board.
send it to the full board.
So
then
send
we
it to
can
the full
table it
board.
at
We're
the
not
full
voting
board.
on it
how
tonight.
about
That's what y'all are voting on.
we
Voting
could,
whether or not it goes to the full board.
Right, to even get
Where the
discussed.
money's coming from.
Mr. McNeely?
The other point I do want to make, you're not appropriating money tonight. So before you would vote to approve the budget that would actually pay this, you will have that information. Okay, so before we can actually. So we will have to come to you and say, here's how many, here's how we're paying for it, here's how much it's going to cost, because it will have to be put into the
Amended budget.
the budget for next year before you approve the new budget. So you're not appropriating funds. I think tonight you're saying, hey, we agree with this concept. It's similar to if, and I haven't been here, but if you say a 7% raise, well, you don't necessarily know how many employees you have for the next school year that you're given that 7% raise to, and you can't really get it down to a dollar amount because it depends. Is that teacher a first-year teacher? Is that teacher a fifth-year teacher? Where are they at on the step? 7% makes a difference depending on where they are. So you do have to approve things at times that you don't know exactly the details of it, as far as what it's gonna cost. But I think the number that you came up with is a high number, a ceiling 50, if it's 50 people. And then you're talking about $300 and something thousand a year, which is not a large percentage at all of your salary budget that you're spending on teachers.
Right, that figures over 2 years, whatever.
Right, so that's what you take 750 divided by 2, you're only at $300 and something thousand a year. So it's not really a big number in the grand scheme of things.
And again, for me, the question is not so much about the specifics, although the specifics are important. The question is, for me, is being able to demonstrate to the court that we have done absolutely everything we can to demonstrate good faith in meeting the court's objective. But, all right, so do we have a motion or on
Can I
how?
say something?
Okay.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Ms. Stilley.
I just wanted to maybe ask Dr. Fasell on this, because they're working with the principals on this, staffing of teachers. She works with certified personnel, by the way. My thoughts on bringing this now is because, it helps inform decisions of teachers. They're staffing now. So a principal needs to be able to say that as they're trying to staff and diversify if they're a targeted school, that this is a stipend that will be offered. And I don't know, I'm fine with waiting, but I just wanted to see how that mixes in with your, and we haven't actually talked this afternoon or today about, I haven't even seen Dr. Fasell or Mr. Jenko today, actually. But how that fits in with the timeline, do you think?
We have our first job fair, transfer fair, it's April 1st. So they're setting goals. Principals are trying to set their diversity goals now. So they're looking at the retirees. So part of the waiting is, that they just need to be, like Ms. Tilley said, they need to be able to offer it at job fairs and at the transfer fair. And teachers like to make their decisions. Like if a teacher is actually thinking about putting into transfer, they don't want to wait. They don't want to wait till the end of the year. They like to go ahead and let them know on April 1st that they're interested in that. That's probably the biggest deadline issue that, Mr. Jenko, can you think of a different? April 1st to me
is there a Southeastern job fair this week?
We have Friday, we have the career fair where we go and try to get them interested in us. That's the Southeastern students that are going to be graduating. So we have that this Friday. Then April 1st, we have the transfer fair and new hires, which are people from other districts who are interested in coming to us and our own people who are interested in changing schools. So that's, to me, the biggest deadline, and that they would want to know this information.
All right, Ms. Dominguez.
So to me, back again to a brand new graduate, if we are now able to offer them a contract on the spot, that they're going to take the job that's offered, whether it's a bonus or not, because they need a job. I just know that's what they do. I just feel like we can still on March the 14th have our meeting and still get it in if we go ahead and, if this committee wants to push it to full board, and we can vote on it on the March 14th and with more information. Even though we don't know the specifics in the budget, when you get that 300-page budget, you're not going to look for this because we're going to forget we did this. If we don't know how much money it is, we don't know where the money's coming from right now, we're not going to know it in an hour from now, we're not going to know how many we're giving or anything. I just feel like we really need a better time to vote.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Is there any public input? All right, motion on the motion is to adopt the administration's recommendation. It's been made and seconded. We'll call the question, ask members of the committee to vote your machines.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
There being no other business to come before this committee, this meeting is adjourned.